What the heck is West Marches? If you haven't heard of it before, West Marches is an experimental style for D&D. It has now become somewhat synonymous with open world sandbox style games, but I wanted to really dig into what it is not, and what it could be. And if you already know all about West Marches, still stick around because I have some advice as someone who ran a West Marches campaign that almost didn't fail, as well as some proposed modifications to the core West Marches formula. West Marches, at its core, is a style of game that focuses on a drop-in, drop-out player base and a bunch of mechanics and design decisions that support that. Rather than have the classic group of 4, a West Marches game typically has 10 to 14 players, even sometimes upwards of 20. Added to this, all sessions are player scheduled with no consistent party. If you and 3 others could meet, it didn't matter if you had played before, you could party up. Assuming, of course, that the DM could make that time work, but more on that later in the video. Where the heck is West Marches? The West Marches setting is integral to understanding the success of the style, and more than one game, my own included, has been sunk by ignoring or giving too little weight to this detail. The importance of this aspect is even reflected in the fact that the style is named after the setting. The core aspects of the setting are actually relatively simple. You have the safe town and the dangerous wilds. That's it. However, these are extremely important. Having the safe town that players always return back to in sort of a looping fashion provides in-world fiction as to why players can drop in and drop out, which is the core reason and purpose behind this style in the first place. West Marches as a concept simply doesn't work if the PCs are spread out across the continent, or simply don't have a safe place to exist if their player can't make it for months. Now, the easiest way to have a safe town and a dangerous wilds is to have literally that, but these concepts can also be abstracted a little bit. Here are some alternate options that give you some more flexibility while keeping the spirit of the setting. If you don't like the physical looping nature of a physical town, you could make it an interdimensional hub, with various worlds being accessible from this hub. Each world could have its own danger gradient, getting more dangerous as you go further, or it could have a static danger level. My next suggestion is some sort of curse that pulls the PCs back. This is a curse that is only placed on the PCs and allows them to explore the Outlands, a place which normally withers and kills anyone that steps foot within it, but the curse will eventually expel them from the Outlands, sending them back to the Waystone in the middle of town. This gives the game an almost roguelite feel and cuts the looping in half, while also presenting some nice in-world fiction as to what sets the PCs apart and why there are no other adventurers. It also gives a really easy end of session button, sort of a cheat code when it comes to pacing. Although I could see some real issues with PCs brushing past or rushing through things because they want to get it done before the end of the session. My last alternative option is to have several hubs with teleportation circles connecting. They cost some amount of gold to travel between them, presenting a potential gold sink for the PCs, and you can only go to one that you have walked to physically. So this walking pace essentially creates checkpoints or, unlocking new areas as you level up and overcome harder challenges. This would create a more MOBA-like feel, with higher leveled PCs being at further out hubs, but being able to travel back to party up with lower leveled PCs. Why the heck is West Marches? Now, what's the driving purpose behind all of this? It's worth considering, as this is a pretty radical departure from the core formula. Well, a big driving factor here is scheduling and time, especially in the complex lives of adults. In the words of the creator, ad hoc scheduling and a flexible roster meant that, ideally, people got to play when they could, but didn't hold up the game for everyone else when they couldn't. If you can play once a week, that's fine. If you can play once a month, that's fine too. It was also meant to curb a certain mindlessness that the creator had observed in his players, where they would just do actions to progress the plot without thinking about them in any amount of detail. However, I think that this has been discussed and addressed in a myriad of ways outside of West Marches, so I don't think it's too important to discuss when highlighting this style. Now we get to my own personal advice for running this style of game, both as someone who has attempted to run this style myself and as a spectator of many games in this style. Hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and observations. Random tables galore. The more random tables you have, the better. Straight up, period. While prepping content for an area is good, you are inevitably going to neglect something. And this is true in regular D&D, but it's even more true in West Marches, where you have a changing roster of players. Players generally have different goals, even within the same style and theme of game. Normally you come to know your party and what they're expecting to get out of each session, and you can prep for that. But this is much more difficult when you're constantly changing the roster. With that, try to pay extra special attention to what it seems like players want mid-session, and have tables prepped to give that stuff to them if it seems like you haven't prepped anything. This means social encounter tables, exploration curiosity tables, combat encounter tables. Any table you can think of, try to have one. I would also recommend, if you can, splitting these tables to be region specific. This can help give a really nice, cohesive theme to a region while still offloading a ton of the prep. The originator refers to this when discussing his wandering monster tables, but I would do this for every single table. This also helps front-load a lot of the work while ensuring that that front-loaded work is actually useful. Every DM knows the noob trap of meticulously creating an area that PCs might go to, and it'll be so cool if they stumble upon it, and then they never go there and you've wasted all your time. On the flip side, creating large tables that you'll be rolling on helps give you a ton of variety while ensuring that all of that content has a chance of coming up every time you roll. Player contribution. This brings me to my next major suggestion for offloading work. I have an award-winning video about Z Bashu's DMing style, as well as my own personal additions to his style. But I'll summarize the relevant bits real quick. Whenever you are traveling anywhere, players can submit prompts in pairs, one good and one bad, and they should be of about equal weight/impact. You then add those prompts to a pool of prompts that starts with 4 bad ones. So the more pairs of prompts that they add, the closer they get that ratio to 50-50. This allows for players to direct the plot and action towards things that they personally want, and really fits with the overall theme of the West Marches. It also offloads a lot of creativity that would normally be prep work onto the personal minds of the players. It does require you to be ready to improv whatever they put in, and everyone at the table should make sure that everyone is okay with whatever's going in the bowl. But if they are, I think that this is a fantastic tool for a West Marches style campaign. The DM can pull these prompts whenever they like, and it's essentially a way to develop a player-tailored random table, because you know that whatever you pull out, at least one person at the table is going to be interested in it. Now, I'd like to get into some ideas that I have for a slight modification of the core formula. And I'll start with my big one: multiple DMs. West Marches feels like it is just screaming to have multiple DMs. After all, it isn't just the player's life that often gets in the way of playing, it's the DM's life as well. The creator says if you can play once a week, that's fine, or if you can play once a month, that's fine too, but it's not fine if you're the DM. You're still the one holding people up. That, to me, feels like the weak link in all of this. And especially with DM burnout being one of the most common reasons that groups fizzle out, I feel like having multiple DMs that can pick up any game is a way to make this even more scheduling resilient than it already is. However, this does raise a bit of a hairy situation. DMs often have wildly differing styles of DMing, and it would be kind of bad if there was a DM that was seen as the preferred DM by players. Now, if some people just like the vibes or style of a DM more than those of another, that's one thing, but the game has to be considered fair and balanced across DMs in terms of challenge and reward. And I think that there are two major ways that this can be ensured. The first is shared DM resources. All of the DMs are working off of the same shared world map and are sure to mark anything that they create during the session. They should also try and provide relatively detailed session reports after each session for the other DMs to peruse. Everyone is also working off of the same random tables that are tied to the danger level of whatever area the players are in. All of this helps to ensure that communication is flowing between the DMs and that they're presenting a consistent challenge based on the risk that the players are taking. Now, the second way is a bit more controversial, but it is supported by the originator of the West Marches style, so I think it's appropriate. All DM rolling should be done in the open. And while I'm normally a proponent that fudging has its place, even within sandbox open world games, I don't think it can ever be done in a game with multiple DMs. If there is even a whiff of favoritism when it comes to the dice, it would destroy the style instantly. The next idea for addition is the concept of PvP, which is sort of a boogeyman in some D&D circles, and with good reason if you ask me. D&D is explicitly and unapologetically not designed for player versus player combat. As a whole, PCs and their classes are designed with less defense and more offense. And this concept is inverted for monsters. From a design standpoint, this is meant to slightly increase the length of combats so that PCs can use all their fun and flashy tools and also burn resources during long dungeon crawls. However, because of this design, many PCs are able to one-shot each other with good enough rolls. So, I propose non-combat PvP. I like to think that in a style like West Marches, PCs are only working together temporarily. While they are outside of the walls of the city, they certainly trust each other, but a healthy dose of competition is baked into the formula and is directly encouraged by the creator. Sharing news of your exploits and loot was a very fun and common activity in the original West Marches campaign. So let's expand upon that competitive atmosphere. Develop some competitions that pit the PCs against each other, whether in terms of skill checks, puzzle solving, time trials that see how quickly / efficiently PCs can dispatch enemies. Set it during some feast or festival and have a point system, then award bronze, silver, and gold at the end. This has a wide range of application as well, whether it's a small social encounter within a larger session, just a little mini session, or potentially even a huge event with dozens of PCs and multiple DMs facilitating different events / games in multiple Discord calls. Now, my last addition is the concept of a marketplace, and it's honestly the idea that I'm the least sure on. When West Marches was created, there was no Discord or Slack or Teams. They were operating off of a shared email list for scheduling and communication. And with these new modern tools, I think that we can introduce some more complex communication into the game. And to that end, I think that buying and selling weapons, armor, magic items, scrolls, all of that could be a really fun interaction between the PCs outside of the session. However, I do think that for this to really work, there needs to be some sort of consistent drain on resources. Some sort of reason to sell, and some sort of reason to gather resources in the first place. This could be done through multiple means, whether that's more strict ration tracking, item degradation, more strict lodging costs. And a lot of these sorts of rules already exist within the PHB, but I feel like there's some of the least consistently enforced rules. But maybe that's the solution right there. Just more strict adherence to those sorts of rules within the PHB could be the solution. Like I said, I'm not certain on how good this would end up being. I think it would prove fun, especially when people are getting random loot off of tables and potentially magic items that they can't even use. Well, that was my summary and take on West Marches. Hopefully you all have a bit better idea of what this style is all about and can take those ideas into your next game. Let me know what you thought of my ideas across the board, and I'll see you next time.